They sent a god to break us. We answered with a warning. The message broadcast from the edge of Terran space was simple. No flourish. No threat. Just a voice. Cold, resolute, unmistakably human. To the throne of the Galaxis Dominion. Earth is closed. Enter Terran space again, and you will not return. The transmission was traced to a system thought dead. A graveyard of orbital wreckage. A human voice, from a place the Empire had extinguished a century ago. They should have ignored it. They didn't. The last breath of Earth hung in the artificial twilight of Bastion 9, a hidden station inside a decaying asteroid belt. Humanity had fled there, scattered across the void like sparks from a dying fire. Some called it survival, others called it surrender. Alara Ken never surrendered. At 34, her face bore the scars of plasma wind and old wounds, one eye, replaced by a tactical implant, the other sharp as glass. She was a veteran of the silencing, the massacre of Earth's orbital defense grid by the Galaxis Empire, and a survivor of the Daedalus Exodus. She had watched the Earth burn from orbit, and she remembered. Now, she was Commander Ken, and she commanded ghosts. Her ship, Resolute, was the last Dreadnought-class cruiser of Terran make, cobbled together from the bones of fallen fleets and held together by hatred and scrap code. Its crew numbered 83 engineers, veterans, orphans, and one defector. I who claimed a dream inhuman. They called her ship cursed. They called her cause foolish. But when the transmission was sent, when Earth declared itself forbidden, they listened. Bastion 9 was quiet the day the stars flickered wrong. Ken stood alone in the war room, the tactical holomap casting blue fire across her face. She stared at the slowly forming warp distortion on the edge of Sol's quarantine perimeter. Coordinates forbidden by law, memory, and treaty. They're coming, she said, the words a whisper. They took the bait. Behind her, First Officer Idris Harlan stepped forward, younger, but born into the Exodus. His voice carried awe, not fear. You sure it'll work? Ken's lips pressed into a line. They think Earth is empty, a grave with no ghosts. We let them believe that for too long. Idris hesitated. The High Council disavowed your message. If this fails, she said, turning to face him, we die remembered. In the shadow of Jupiter's fractured moons, Resolute powered up. Every deck hummed with ancient fury. The ship's AI, called her, pulsed through the walls, not machine-like, but with the slow rhythm of a heart refusing to stop. Enemy vessels approaching, called her intoned. Galaxis Vanguard class, 3 cruisers, no envoy. They're testing our bark, Idris muttered. Ken stood at the bridge, hand resting on the railing like a commander of old. Then, let them hear the bite. The stars screamed as Terran stealth mines ignited across the zone. The first enemy cruiser blinked out, its hull atomized before it could send a warning. The second spiraled, half its mass sheared by kinetic lances hidden inside old Terran satellites. The third stopped, then it ran. No response, no demand, no reply, just the silence of retreat. In the aftermath, Calder spoke again. New transmission received, origin, Imperial Relay Node 917, message content, encrypted. Ken's brow furrowed. Play it. A voice filled the chamber, ancient, layered, regal. The unmistakable tone of a Dominion speaker. To the Terran anomaly, you were given extinction. Return to it, or face a second erasure. The silence afterward was heavier than space. Ken turned slowly. They remember us now. Later. Alone in the observation deck, Ken stared at the stars. One hand touched the old insignia burned into her gauntlet, the eagle clutching the broken chain, symbol of the Earth Defense Accord. I buried my planet, she whispered, but I never buried our will. Below her, Earth turned slowly. Green had gone to gray, oceans to ash, but it was still there, watching, waiting. A chime rang through her earpiece. Idris, we have movement near Mars, something big. Ken stood, spine stiffening. The weight of destiny pressed on her shoulders. Sound battle stations, she said quietly. Awake the sleepers, it begins. They thought we were a memory. They never imagined that we remembered everything. It was not a fleet, it was a statement. The object emerging from Mars' shadow dwarfed every known warship on record. A siege construct so vast, it distorted gravitational readings from Luna. To Europa, not sleek, not elegant, brutal, a monument of force. Designation, Valkar Primer's Empire code name, the Hammer of Silence. It hadn't moved into centuries. Now it glided silently toward Earth's perimeter, escorted by 24 cruisers, cloaked drones. and a shipborne choir of Dominion speakers, a reply. Ken stared at the projections inside the war room. The hammer's silhouette glowed blood red, filling the tactical display like a coming eclipse. Even Calder paused before speaking. Contact in 16 hours. No attempt to communicate. They're not here to talk, Idris said. His voice was low, and for once, empty of awe. They're here to finish what they started, Ken replied. She turned to her officers, some survivors of Earth's fall, others born in hiding. Each wore the same expression, that fusion of dread and purpose reserved for those who have nothing left to lose and everything still burning inside. We declare Terran space forbidden, Ken said. Now we prove we meant it. The Dominion had called it the cleansing, Earth's fall, broadcast through the stars as a warning. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms, built on order and obedience. Humanity had refused both. What the empire couldn't understand, was that humans didn't break. They bent. They bled. They vanished into asteroid belts and black-side moons. But they remembered. Alara Ken remembered the sound of her sister's last breath over a scrambled comlink. She remembered the silence after Earth's shields went down. She remembered the face of the Dominion speaker who watched it burn. He was on that ship, Valakar Primaris. The halls of Resolute echoed with movement. Cryopods cracked open in the lower decks, releasing the station-born volunteers who had chosen Ken's rebellion. Many had never seen Earth with their own eyes. Yet every one of them wore the old insignia, a half-buried planet, ringed by steel, lit by stars. Idris walked beside Ken through the command spine. You know this is a slaughter line, right? I know, she said. You picked this. I did. He stopped. Then tell me why. Why here? Why now? Why Earth? Ken faced him. Her gaze cold, but not cruel, because every species needs its myth. We became theirs. The ones who said no and paid the price, but we never gave. Then a second chapter. We disappeared, scattered, silent. She stepped closer. Today, we write it. Deep within Bastion 9's encrypted vaults, an old file stirred. Calder had been watching it for decades. An orphan code inherited from pre-fall Tyranid. Not a weapon, but a message. Not a strategy, but a truth. Ken opened it alone. Project VIGIL subheader. If Earth falls, wake the sky. Embedded data. Coordinates. Signal frequencies. Quantum echoes. And a line of Terran code. No empire survives what it cannot understand. Ken stared at the blinking cursor beside the file. She didn't smile. She just nodded. 16 hours passed like a countdown to God's judgment. Valakar Primaris reached the threshold of the Terran exclusion zone, a region marked in Galactic. Law is unsalvageable, not because Earth was dangerous, but because it was dead. The hammer stopped. Ken stood on the bridge, every sensor trained on the behemoth. Still no transmission, no hail, just presence. Then, without warning, the voice came. It didn't use language. It used pressure, vibration, emotion compressed into thought. The Dominion called it the Deep Calling, an imprint of imperial will, used only in absolution. Every mind aboard Resolute felt it. You were erased. You are unreal. This is your second death. Dozens dropped to their knees. Noses bled. One officer, seized, collapsing beside her station. Ken stayed standing. She screamed through clenched teeth. Calder, firewall the bridge. The AI reacted instantly, isolating all human consciousness from the Deep Calling. The pain dimmed, but the echo lingered. Status? Ken rasped. Minor hemorrhaging across crew, Idris said. Pale but upright. No fatalities. They tried to override our souls. Ken turned to Calder. Deploy the warning. Calder's tone dropped to a low, electric growl. Broadcasting now. Across the system, in every frequency, every channel, even in ancient subquantum Terran code. A single message repeated. This space is Terran. You are forbidden. You have been warned. Then the sky broke. Dozens of micro-warp rips tore open, not jump signatures, not human ships. They were old, very old, ships of the First Fleet, ghost ships, lost during the fall, vanished, presumed destroyed, but they weren't. They had been waiting, and they had just decloaked. They buried our fleet in silence. We taught it how to wait. They had vanished on the day Earth fell. 89 ships from the First Defense Fleet, last seen above the Pacific Rim, gone without signal, without wreckage. Some said they were vaporized in orbit. Others whispered of a final jump, a blind leap to nowhere. But they had never been destroyed. They had listened. Through fractured calms and burned-out relays, they'd heard the death of their world, and then, obeying the last unsent order buried in a Terran subroutine, they vanished in the deep solar orbit, beyond the heliopause, silent and cloaked, waiting. Now, they returned. The command deck of Resolute exploded with alerts. Kent didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on the sensor readouts as ship after ship decloaked, hulking Terran warcruisers, corvettes, and black hole hunter-killers, there, paint-scorched, but emblems untouched. The Earth and Sky crested the Terran Accord. "Identify all ships," she ordered, voice steady. Calder's voice held a trace of awe. Vessel registry confirmed. Origin, First Fleet. Command signatures. Authentic. Captain Milo Trent, Iron Rain. Commander Sarah Yun, Ghostwake. Captain Cale Reese, Athena's Thorn. All presumed Kier in orbit of Earth. Year 0 postfall. Idris swore under his breath. "They're real." Ken leaned forward. "Patch me through." The static cleared. A voice, aged, cracked with time, but iron strong, answered. "This is Captain Trent of the Iron Rain. To any surviving Terran forces, we heard the call. Took us a century to answer, but we're here." Ken stepped closer to the mic. "This is Commander Elara Ken of Resolute." Earth stands. A long pause, then, softly, "Damn right it does." The Dominion fleet began to shift. Their formation pulled tighter, wary. They hadn't expected a reply, let alone a fleet, and now Earth had one again. Back in Resolute's war room, Ken studied the new battle group arrangement. She felt the energy shift. Across the entire station, fear turned into something dangerous, hope. They were forgotten. She whispered, "Even by us." Idris nodded. "How did they survive this long?" Calder answered, displaying a visual map of the First Fleet's hidden path. They buried themselves in the solar dark. Fusion cores hibernated, life support on rotation. Some crew slept for 90 years. They kept one thing running. What? Memory. Ken met with Captain Trent aboard the Iron Rain 2 hours later. He looked every bit the myth, tall, silver-bearded, with sunken eyes that had seen the blue of Earth vanish under fire. His first words weren't protocol. "They made you commander." "They made me desperate," Ken said. He laughed. "Once. A dry, broken thing. We're going to lose." "I know." "Then why now?" Ken looked at the viewport, at the void between Mars and Earth, at the Dominion warships closing in. "Because we were never meant to survive. Just remind them what it costs to erase us." Trent tilted his head. "You sound like Sarah Yun. She's alive." His eyes widened. Ken smiled faintly. "They all are." And so, the resistance began, not with a fleet descending from the heavens, not with victory, but with defiance. The reborn Terran battle group moved into a shield formation above Earth's orbit. Calder sensed all AI cores with a narrow-band encrypted net reactivating. An ancient defense algorithm codenamed Warden Protocol. Across orbit, buried silos cracked open for the first time in 100 years. Old weapons, unfinished ones, forgotten prototypes of Earth's desperate last stand. Now they would fire. The Dominion moved. 3 of their advanced cruisers broke. Formation accelerating toward Terran space at sublight. The Hammer remained still, watching. Ken stood on the Resolute's bridge. All ships, weapons free. From the dark side of the moon, a forgotten Terran artillery station called Lancer Spire activated. One shot, a rail slug 3 meters long, ripped through the lead Dominion cruiser, shattering its forward hull and sending fragments across. Mars orbit. From Ghostwake, a hail of shatter mines detonated in the path of the second cruiser. Peeling off its armor-like skin, the third reached striking distance and found Resolute waiting. Ken gave the order. "Kinetic battery, full, charge." Calder responded. "Target acquired." The cruiser's energy weapon lit up. To slow, Resolute's main cannon fired. The shot carved through space, struck the cruiser midsection, and snapped it clean in half. Silence, then cheers. The galaxy had not seen a human fleet in over a century. Now they were back, with vengeance. In the aftermath of the skirmish, Ken sat in the dim of her private quarters. A relic sat on her table, a small, fractured chip embedded in crystal. The last recording from her sister. She played it. "If you survive, don't fight to win. Fight to make them remember we never bowed." Tears welled, uninvited, Calder interrupted. "Commander, Dominion transmission incoming." "Why ban?" "Put it through." A new voice spoke, cold, smooth. Familiar. The speaker from Earth's fall, so the embers still burn. Curious. You mistake memory for strength. You will fall again. This time, no one will remember your name. Ken leaned forward, whispering her reply, voice steady, like steel drawn across frost. Then come take it. They came to finish us. Instead, they found themselves bleeding in the dark. The Dominion did not retreat. They responded from the edges of the system. 6 more warships broke warp, sleek, obsidian vessels with engines that screened in the sublight spectrum. Dominion flares, not made to conquer, but to erase. Behind them, the Valakar primer is finally stirred. The hammer moved, not quickly, not with anger, but like an executioner called to work. On the Terran side, the war room of Resolute was quiet. The latest losses blinked red across the holomap. To defense satellites destroyed, Athena's Thorn crippled, and half of Ghostwake's starboard flank venting atmosphere. Captain Yun had survived, barely. The price of resistance was rising. Fast. Kent stood over the display like a statue carved in orbit. We bloodied them, Idris said, leaning against the console, shoulder wrapped in a makeshift sling. And now they've decided we're worth the effort. Kent didn't reply. She was staring at the hammer. Its mass, its movement, its terrifying patience. They're not rushing, she finally whispered. They're waiting for us, to spend everything we have. She turned to Calder. Any trace of Warden Site 7? Calder pulsed a flicker of blue through the lights. Scattered signals detected beneath Earth's mantle. Power dormant. Signal decay severe. Is it functional? Unknown. Ken exhaled sharply through her nose. Then we're going down. 2 hours later, Resolute's drop shuttle screamed through Earth's dead skies, slicing down through the scorched upper atmosphere like a blade returning to its sheath. The world was worse than Ken remembered. Ash dunes covered entire continents. Oceans were glass fields. The skeletons of megacities reached into the air like pleading hands, rusted, silent, and still proud. Warden Site 7 lay beneath what was once Colorado, deep beneath the ruins of an old Terran supercommit nexus called Vault Arclight. Ken had never seen it in person. Few had. It was said to be the fallback of last resort, a black project constructed at the height of the war. It sealed before Earth's final scream. Now, she walked into it, with Idris at her side, and a strike team of 6. Ken descended through kilometers of stone and steel, torching open doors with plasma cutters and waking ancient systems from sleep. At the lowest level, they found it, a circular chamber, a ring of crystal fiber pylons surrounding a singular obelisk. Calder's voice crackled through her neural comm. Welcome to Warden 7. Final classified objective, Terran substrate reclamation. Idris raised a brow. What the hell is that? Ken stepped closer to the obelisk. It was humming now, reacting to her presence. Calder's voice continued. A last-ditch defense, not a weapon, a seed, embedded in the planet, designed to awaken if Earth was ever threatened again by off-world force. Requires command activation. Ken stared. A planetary AI? No. Calder answered. Memory above. In orbit. The sky was on fire. Ghostwake's hull gave way after sustaining a direct hit. Captain Yun went down with her ship, ramming the flare responsible in one final act of defiance. She didn't scream. She sang. Iron Rain and Resolute were now outnumbered 5-1, and the hammer had nearly reached low Earth orbit. Deep, underground, Kim placed her hand against the obelisk. It scanned her biometrics. It found her rank, her origin, her DNA. It hesitated. Then it spoke, not through sound, through her. Images flooded her mind, Earth as it once was, before the fire, before the silence. A voice not hers whispered through her skull. Terran echo confirmed. Directive unlocked. You are the last commander. Do you wish to activate planetary? Memory substrate. Warning. Activation will consume remaining Terran biosphere. This is a one-way ignition. Idris stepped forward. What's it saying? Ken looked at him, her eyes wide, shimmering with something to ancient to. Be tears. It remembers everything. In orbit, Calder processed the signal spike. A wave of quantum interference now pulsed from beneath Earth's surface. The Dominion warships began to experience guidance loss. One flare spun wildly into the atmosphere, burning up as it fell. The Valakar primer is paused. Then, for the first time since arriving, it spoke. A channel opened across all frequencies. We sense the wound. Earth has awakened. Ken stood inside the chamber as the pylons around her began to glow. Idris whispered, "What does it want?" Ken spoke quietly, as if translating something from beyond time, to remember us, into the soil, into the rock, into every particle of what we were. Idris's eyes narrowed, and the cost? Everything. She stood there for a long time, fingers just above the ignition crystal, then lowered her hand. Not yet. The team returned to orbit as Dominion ships began to reposition, slower now, as if unsure. Something had changed. Earth was resonating, not screaming, not crying, remembering. The Dominion speaker broadcast again, louder, harsher, as if trying to assert control over something slipping away. This planet is dust. Your defiance is myth. Cease, or we will scar your legacy to atoms. Ken stepped back onto the Resolute's bridge. No. She said, "You will remember us." And she gave the order to open fire. They came to erase a species. What they found was a world that would not forget. Fire lit the sky. Terran warships rose like ash-fed phantoms, dancing between Dominion flares in a deadly waltz. The Resolute led the charge, not fastest, not strongest, but furious, carrying the soul of a species written in fire and blood. Ken stood on her bridge, surrounded by chaos. Sparks fell like embers from cracked ceiling conduits. Tactical feeds flickered, interference mounting. The planetary resonance from Warden Site 7 had begun to alter the magnetic lattice of the entire system. Earth was changing, and so were they, enemy trajectory shifting. Calder's voice echoed across the command deck. Dominion formation. Breaking. They are adapting. Delayed, Ken whispered. She had seen this before, in the old wars, when the Empire hesitated, when the Predator realized its prey was not afraid. Idris shouted from his console, "Iron Rain is falling. Back. They've lost inertial control." Ken's eyes shot toward the holomap. Captain Trent's ship, once the proud spearhead of the First Fleet, was spinning out, trailing atmosphere from a breach in its rear thrusters. 3 flares closed in like vultures. She didn't hesitate. Redirect Resolute. All power to forward. Drive. Intercept course. Commander, Idris began. She turned. "I will not let another name vanish from our sky." The Resolute roared through the chaos, pushing its core to the edge of fusion failure. Within seconds, it slammed between Iron Rain and the incoming flares. Ken raised her voice. All guns, full spread. Kinetic lances lanced out in an arc of fury, riddling one flare's hull with burning holes. Another ship swung wide, evading, too late to stop Iron Rain from stabilizing and blinking into retreat. Range. The third flare pressed in, charging. A particle beamed directly at the Resolute's weakened flank. Ken stood still, hands behind her back, watching the death flash come. And then, it stopped, just short, a shockwave. The Dominion beam was fired, scattering into harmless energy rain. Ken's eyes widened. Calder, the AI's voice held static. Resonance disruption. Warden Site 7 is interfering with directed energy targeting. She stared at the stars. Earth was shielding them. Later, in the dark calm after battle, Ken stood in the briefing chamber with her senior officers and holographic relays of all surviving Terran ships. Each bore the same look, exhausted, bleeding, but burning inside. Captain Trent, his voice raspy from smoke inhalation, leaned into his mic. "You're sitting on a miracle, Ken. What is that thing under the crust?" She answered without flair. "It's our memory, Warden Site 7. It holds the substrate of our culture, our data, our pain, everything that survived the fall. It's not a weapon." She paused. "Until now, a silence spread." Trent blinked. "Are you saying Earth itself is defending us?" Ken nodded. "I didn't activate it. Not fully. But it's waking up." Meanwhile, deep within the Dominion command vessel, the Valakar Primaris, a crisis unfolded. The speaker, ancient, robed in carbon weave armor, voice engineered to speak across minds, paced in his sanctum. His command staff watched the data streams, trembling. "Explain this," the speaker demanded. A subordinate bowed low. "The Terrans have reactivated a planetary AI substrate. It is resonating with gravitational interference, disrupting our predictive matrices." Another added, "Their weapons are imprecise, outdated, but their cohesion is unnatural. They refuse to fracture." The speaker's golden eyes narrowed. "They are not fighting for survival. They are fighting for meaning." He turned. "Then we remove the meaning." On Earth, Ken was already anticipating the next move. She stood alone again in Warden Site 7, deep beneath the stone, staring at the obelisk. The resonance was stronger now, a low hum she could feel in her ribs, like an ancient song. Calder, she said quietly, play the oldest entry. The obelisk shimmered. A flickering video projection appeared, a pre-fall recording, barely intact. A woman, olive-skinned, brown-eyed, stood before a camera, dust on her face. Behind her, the skyline of burning New Manhattan. Ken's heart stopped. It was her sister. If you're seeing this, the woman said, we failed, but I want you to know we were never alone. We encoded everything, our dreams, our art, our defiance, into the earth itself. You won't rebuild from scratch. You'll rebuild from memory. We are the soil now, Ken whispered. I remember. And if they ever come back, her sister finished, voice breaking. Don't let them take our name. Later, aboard the Resolute, Ken stood. With Idris at the viewport, the Dominion ships were regrouping, but slower now, uncertain. Do we have a plan? He asked. She handed him a data ship. He read the header aloud. Project, Epitaph Directive, Memory Weaponization, Substrate Pulse Conversion. His voice caught. You're going to use the Warden, not like a gun, she said, like a voice. Idris frowned. What will it say? Ken looked out toward Earth, scarred, silent, breathing with ghosts. It'll tell them what they did and what we became because of it. Somewhere deep in the Dominion network, an alert flared. A quantum pulse had just been detected, one that mirrored Dominion ancestral encoding. But this one was human, not a threat, not a virus, a memory, a warning in the oldest language of the stars. And it ended with 3 words: do not return. This was never just a war. It was a reckoning, carved into the bones of a planet. The stars had gone quiet. For the first time in a century, Terran signals echoed louder than the Dominion's. The memory pulse had reached halfway across. The Orion arm, not a weapon in the conventional sense, but a retelling. The kind that slipped past firewalls and logic cores. The kind that made empires hesitate. Across Dominion sectors, machines stuttered. Choir fleets stopped mid-maneuver. Subjugated species, long silent, whispered stories that had once been forbidden. Humanity, the race that had burned, bled, vanished, had not died. It had simply waited. And now it was awake. Ken stood on the Resolute's bridge, hands braced on the railing, eyes locked on the behemoth hanging over Earth like a falling mountain. The Valakar Primaris. The hammer of silence was no longer silent. Its dependent resonance pulsed in waves, tremoring Terran sensors. On its hull, new ports were opening, venting streams of molten data, forming a vast lattice of shimmering light around its superstructure. Calder's tone had shifted. Even the AI sounded anxious. Enemy preparing planetary-scale annihilation weapon. Design unknown. Energy signature exceeds first fall metrics by 230%. Time to impact? Ken asked. 26 minutes. Idris turned. We can't stop that. Not conventionally. Ken nodded. Then we don't fight conventionally. The War Council convened for the last time aboard Resolute. Ken stood in front of a full 3D projection of Warden Site 7's obelisk and Earth's inner resonance field. Her voice was firm, even as the walls seemed to shake with distant blasts. This is our line, she said. The hammer will not stop, and we no longer have the numbers to match their strength. Captain Trent passed into the calm from the crippled iron rain, leaning close. So you mean to ignite it? I mean to finish it. Ken said, Project Epitaph wasn't meant to save us. It was meant to be us. A planetary echo, carrying not just our technology, but our truth. Idris stepped forward, quietly. There's a problem. Ken turned. What? He showed her the diagnostic feed. Warden's substrate is decaying. It won't last. Another activation without full neural anchor. Someone has to sink permanently. A silence spread through the room. Trent said nothing. Ken looked down, then up. I'll do it. No, Idris snapped. You've led this. You've carried us this far. If we lose you, if we lose Earth, Ken interrupted. Nothing else matters. Her eyes were calm and very far away. Back underground, in the pulsing chamber of Warden Site 7, Ken walked alone through the flickering pylons. The obelisk responded to her now, like it knew her. Calder's voice echoed in her ear. Neural sync will overwrite 97% of cortical identity. You will not survive as yourself. I'm not here to survive, she whispered. I'm here to be remembered. Her hand touched the obelisk, and the world responded. Above, on the Valakar Primaris, The speakers stood in a ring of Dominion high minds, their robes shimmering with ancient nano-fabric. They were singing now, not words, but frequencies that bend metal and flesh together. They summoned the final protocol, the world sunder. Let the last echo of Earth vanish. The speaker intoned, let no memory remain. Then the light changed. It wasn't from the stars. It came from Earth, from within, across the scorched continents. From dead oceans to shattered cities, something rose, a pulse, then a second, then a rhythm. Ken's voice echoed across all Dominion frequencies, not through comms, but through matter. You burned our skies. We carved your name into stone. You erased our language. We taught it to the stars. You silenced our children. We buried your lies in the core of our world. And then, we remember, from orbit, Earth began to glow. Warden Site 7 reached critical resonance and detonated not in fire, but memory. A wave of encoded emotion erupted across space: grief, love, defiance, rage, every Terran loss and every Terran stand. It struck Dominion systems like a psychic virus, not destructive, but undeniable. On the Valakar Primaris, Dominion minds screamed. Their logic collapsed. Weapons failed. The lattice structure of the world sunder fragmented, then imploded. The hammer of silence, the unstoppable engine of extinction, shuddered and stopped. In the moments that followed, Terran vessels surged forward, not in formation, in fury. Iron Rain, limping but alive, struck first, ramming its last railgun shot directly into the weakened hull of a flare. Ghostwake's surviving crew, now aboard Resolute, launched a final barrage from the upper decks. But it was not firepower that broke the Dominion. It was Ken. Her voice still echoed, now part of the Earth itself. The Dominion speaker dropped to his knees inside his sanctum, blood running from his ears. This is not possible. This is not warfare. His second-in-command whispered, it's remembrance. Back on Resolute, Idris stood at the command. Console, fist clenched, tears in his eyes. He heard her. So did everyone. Ken's voice fused into the sky, into the ground, into them. Earth is not dead. Earth is not gone. Earth is us. He turned to Calder. Status of the hammer. The AI replied, disabled. Command systems paralyzed. Terran Echo has saturated target structure. She's in the ship, Idris murmured. Calder pulsed softly. She's the ship. She is Earth now. And above it all, the Dominion fleet scattered. Some in retreat. Some in madness. Some in silence. They had not faced soldiers. They had faced a species that refused to die. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we refused to be forgotten. The Dominion fled, not all at once, not in clean lines of retreat. They fractured, some ships spiraling out of control, others burning as their AI cores shorted beneath the weight of what they'd absorbed, the psychic scream of Earth. Ken's voice, embedded in the Warden substrate, didn't just echo. It tore. Inside Dominion minds, centuries of certainty cracked. Programs built to overwrite memory were now infected by it. Coordinates corrupted by childhood songs. Navigation systems overridden by Terran poetry. Cruisers that once sang destruction now trembled with the sound of a mother whispering her child's name into a bunker that never held. They had tried to unmake a people, and instead, they inherited their ghosts. On the bridge of the Resolute, Idris stood in the half-light of post-resonant silence. The stars looked different now, less distant, less cold. Earth pulsed beneath them, glowing faintly from the ignition of Warden Site 7. No longer just a planet, now a monument. Any word from Ken? He asked. Calder's voice was quiet. Like it knew this question came from more than just protocol. Her mind remains active within the planetary substrate. Neural patterns stable, but inaccessible. You mean she's alive? By human definition, Calder replied, no, but by Terran memory, she endures. Captain Trent's voice crackled across the comms from the Iron Rain. Idris, you've got to see this. The screen shifted. A wide-angle view showed the Dominion flagship, the Valakar Primaris, slowly rotating in orbit, motionless, its hull bleeding. Soft light where once it pulsed with dominance. Something had bloomed along its surface, vines, not literal, but streams of Terran data, crystallized threads of ancestral memory wrapping the vessel like ivy around ancient stone. Every sensor sweep confirmed the impossible. The ship was transforming, being rewritten. Ken's inside it. Idris breathed, changing it. Trent nodded slowly. We've never done this before. No, Idris replied, but we've always known how, and then the impossible became. Prophecy, the Valakar Primaris, once the executioner of Earth, now powered not by Dominion song, but by Terran resonance, turned toward the remaining Dominion fleet. Its calms open, and Ken spoke, not in pain, not in rage, but in clarity. This is Terran command. You are trespassing in sovereign memory space. Leave, or be remembered the way we choose. 3 Dominion. Cruisers turned and ran. 1 opened fire. The hammer responded, but not with weapons, with truth. A focused memory pulse, a surgical strike of experience. The firing cruiser collapsed mid-charge, not from damage, but from sheer psychic overload. Its crew remembered what they had done, and what it had cost. Their own minds rejected the Dominion. Their ship detonated in a silent bloom of light. Oh, across the battlefield, a shift began. Dominion ships powered down. Some drifted, some waited, and some turned, engines flickering, changing hue, signaling submission. The war, which had stretched generations, was ending not in fire, but in conversion. Inside the Resolute, Idris gave the final order, broadcast to all Dominion systems. Tell them what happened here. No filters, no diplomacy, just the truth. Caller pulse bright, message ready, playing now. Every vessel, every world, every species that had once believed Earth to be ash, now saw the last moments of the Warden ignition, the memories of cities lost and children born in shadow, the songs of defiance sung in bunkers and whispered across stars, the silhouette of Ken standing alone beside the obelisk, and her final words, we do not fade, we do not forget. We are Earth, and you are forbidden, somewhere far beyond the system, in a sector where the Dominion had never been challenged. A subordinate asked the question that had not been spoken in centuries. What do we do now? The elder beside him, a creature bred for obedience, stared long at the broadcast, at the woman who had become the voice of a planet. His reply was not protocol. It was reverence. We remember, later, aboard the Resolute, Idris walked, alone through the dim halls. All around him, humans, young, old, broken, brave, were weeping, cheering, embracing. He stepped into the observation deck and stared down at Earth, still wounded, still scarred, but glowing. From beneath its crust, pulses of light still rose. Warden's memory lattice breathing in the silence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old Terran patch Ken had carried, the one with the faded Earth and steel crest. He placed it gently on the console and whispered to the void, you didn't die, Ken, you became. They tried to make us a footnote in their empire. Instead, we became the warning at the start of every war. There was no victory parade, no great trumpet blast, no headlines across the stars, only silence, vast and honest, the kind that follows after the storm has passed, when all that remains is the reckoning of survival. Earth turned slowly beneath its resurrected satellites, a battered sphere stitched with memory and ash orbiting above. What remained of the Terran fleet drifted in formation, scorched, scarred, unbroken, on every console, in every surviving human ship. Ken's voice remained, not as a recording, as a presence. She was the Earth now, her consciousness woven into the Warden lattice, imprinted across the planetary memory substrate like a pulse, steady, vast, enduring. A monument that thought, a planet that remembered. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy shifted. Dominion fleets withdrew from border worlds. Transmission networks once flooded with propaganda now stood empty, overridden by sudden silence. Or something stranger. Terran messages had spread like wildfire, stories, memories, warnings, and the phrase that now hung like a shadow over every star map. Terran space, do not enter. Memory hostile, resonance lethal. Earth speaks, Earth remembers. On Mars, at the old Tharsis shipyard, Idris stood with Captain Trent before the partially restored hull of a new warship, smaller than Resolute, sleeker than the Iron Rain, but bearing a symbol not seen in 100 years, a reformed Terran Accord crest, newly forged, freshly inked into armor with molten glass and steel. Trent ran his hand along the plating. They're not coming back, are they? Idris shook his head. Not soon, maybe not ever. Trent looked up. Why not finish them? Idris gazed toward the sky, toward the blue dots still pulsing faintly. In the void, we didn't fight to destroy them, Trent. We fought to remind them who we were. Aboard the Resolute, now converted into the first Terran embassy vessel in over a century, Diplomats, scientists, and surviving commanders gathered in Ken's old command deck. A council had been formed, not to rule, but to remember. The Terran Accord was reborn not as a government, but a promise. That humanity would never again be silent. That no world, scorched or silenced, would be forgotten. And that memory itself was a weapon and a shield. Idris stood at the central, hollowable. The stars shimmered around him, lit by new navigation routes and ancient ones recovered from Warden's data vault. He looked to the gathered crew and spoke the final doctrine Ken had etched into the substrate. We are not conquerors. We are not ghosts. We are the voice in the silence, the record in the dark, the ember in the ash. We are human, and we remember everything. In the farthest reaches of Dominion territory, a strange phenomenon began to unfold. Subjugated species, long silent under imperial code, began to awaken. Their ancestor songs, their lost names, their forbidden stories all began to resurface, not because of arms, but because of resonance. Ken's final pulse had carried more than memory. It had carried permission to remember. Across galaxies, enslaved minds opened. History returned, and with it, the knowledge that one species, long thought erased, had stood up and spoken back, not in hatred, but in defiance. The speaker of the Dominion, now deposed, his mind, shattered by Ken's echo, sat in the ruins of his own command center, repeating a single phrase over and over. The planet speaks. The planet speaks. The planet speaks. And across the Dominion remnants, a question began to spread like a plague. What if every world we burned remembers us? 2 years later, Idris stood once more on Earth. The skies were still bruised, the winds still bitter, but life, stubborn, wild, human, had begun to return. Colonies rebuilt among the ruins. Children played atop broken bunkers. And in the heart of the old Colorado Warden site, a museum was built, not of artifacts, but of voices. Every visitor walked alone through a chamber filled with projected memories. Some laughed, some cried, some fell to their knees, unable to bear the weight of what had come before. All left changed. At the end of the hall stood a single message, etched in soft gold light on a wall of black. This is Earth. We forgive nothing. We forget nothing. But we remember you. One night, Idris sat beneath the fractured sky and looked up at the stars. The new generation would never know what silence tasted like, would never know what it meant to believe they were alone, because now, wherever humans went, they carried the Earth with them, not in ships, but in soul. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.